On today's solo Sunday news, Oba Femi wins the NXT title and will face Cody Rhodes. Tony D'Angelo returns at NXT Deadline. Darby Allin has been ruled out of the Continental Classic, and more TNA deals expiring. Hello and welcome to WhatCulture Wrestling, the solo Sunday news. Myself, Andrew Ballard. I hope you're good, I hope you're well, and I hope your weekend is going as well as possible. For me, it's been a pretty low-key weekend with a very decent point away at Deepdale for my beloved Wrexham. Come on, that town. But you are here for wrestling, and wrestling is what myself and editor Ryan will bring you on this fine Sunday morning or afternoon, whatever. It's Sunday. Starting with the kind of shocking news that Oba Femi is once again your NXT champion. Yes, winning back that title at NXT Deadline last night. Of course, the winner of Oba versus Ricky Saints. It was already announced that they were going to be facing Cody Rhodes at Saturday night's main event next weekend. And given the relationship between Cody and my close personal friend, Absolute Ricky, most people kind of predicted we'd get a fun Rhodes versus Saints match next weekend. Likewise, I know myself, I didn't expect Oba Femi to get another run as the NXT champion. I mean, did he need another run? It kind of felt like Oba was primed and ready for a main roster move. And Ricky's been doing his thing at the top of the NXT men's division. Maybe he'd carry that belt for a few more months and maybe look at Saints, his own main roster move after WrestleMania 42. But hey, that's just my thoughts. But no, Oba Femi will be sticking around in NXT for at least a little while longer, becoming a two-time NXT champion and setting up Oba versus Cody for next weekend. Now, to be fair, I think that match could be a lot of fun, as could Cody versus Ricky. I mean, we have seen that before, technically over in AEW. But just personally, having been on the Ricky Starks train for a long old time, I selfishly wanted to see Ricky get that spot at the huge Saturday night's main event, the John Cena's retirement special. But the other side of this is that maybe this means Ricky Saints is the one main roster bound in the more immediate future. I mean, I've seen some people speculating that he could be revealed as the Masked Attacker from Survivor Series. I mean, it's been widely reported that it was Austin Theory under the mask at Survivor Series, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be Austin Theory as the one revealed to be that attacker when that reveal, takes place down the line. And I mean, even if he is, that still doesn't mean that Ricky Saints can't have a role either in the Vision or elsewhere on the main roster, particularly when you're going to remember SmackDown is set to switch back to 3 hours in the new year. Oh, you could sense the enthusiasm in my voice bouncing out. Oh, yeah. But hey, if you're watching Ricky, friend of the channel, of course, we are totally due another catch-up in May, so keep that schedule clear, my man. But Oba Femi reclaiming the NXT title was not the only major news coming out of NXT Deadline, as tied to that title, just adjacent to it, is Tony D'Angelo made his surprise return at Deadline. Now, Tony D has not been seen since... July. We're going to go with July. I mean, it was Stax and Luca Cristofino in a three-way match that Tony won. Then we got that vignette, the one that very much pulled inspiration from the final scene of The Sopranos, the greatest TV series in the history of television, of course. Now it's suggested that Tony D may or may have not been whacked at the end of that. And leave that kind of had many people then speculating that, was that kind of killing off the Tony D'Angelo character for NXT, and then that the Don was going to be heading to the main roster. But no, we've not seen Tony D'Angelo since. So, 5 months? But then he made his shock return at the end of NXT Deadline last night. Now, part of the hype for Deadline, that revolved around the two Iron Survivor matches. The women's match being won by Evolve Women's Champion Kendall Gray, who just continues to look so impressive, man. I mean, WWE, if they handle it well, they've got not just a real prospect there, but they've got a real top star in waiting if all goes to plan. But for the men's Iron Survivor, which closed out Deadline, it was Javon Evans winning out over Leon Slater, another one of my boys, Leon, Miles Bourne, Joe Hendry, of course, friend of the channel, and Dion Lennox. And in Javon, he's got a shot at the NXT title at New Year's Eve on January the 6th. Now, as Deadline went off the air, Javon celebrated in the ring. You had Oba Femi come out onto the entranceway. The two stared off. As commentary, they talked up how Javon has never beaten Oba Femi. In fact, barely anybody has beaten Oba Femi, if off the top of my head. I mean, Tony D'Angelo did for the North American title, and obviously Ricky Saints. But to be fair, that story, it is a great one. One that's been in place for like a year or so, it feels. It's the story of Javon Evans just not being able to get past Oba Femi, the proverbial underdog, just doing all he can, coming so close, but coming up just so short. But that, of course, that story, that was before then Ricky Saints kind of swept in, got in there first, beat Oba Femi. But if we're circling back to Javon and Oba Femi, And Javon, that story of him overcoming the odds and taking the belt from Oba, I'm absolutely here for that, man. However, there was a spanner thrown in the works when, as the deadline credits, they popped up on the screen. We're all meant to think that, okay, that's it, this is ending. But then the arena lights, they went off. A video played of a mysterious, blurred out figure walking alongside, like, the side of a bridge. And then the spotlight in the arena started shining on Javon Evans in the ring, still blacked out the rest of it. And then the young OG was greeted by the returning Tony D'Angelo. Now, Javon offered a handshake, but he was greeted by a chokeslam by the Don, who then dropped some, black things on Javon, like black bits of paper, or maybe it was supposed to be some petals. You could really tell, just these little things. Things that popped up on NXT last week with Ava, and she had that kind of box with the same stuff in. But anyway, Tony D'Angelo is back and has seemingly inserted himself into the NXT title picture as well. And not just that, this seemed to be a slightly different Tony D. I mean, obviously it was a very brief appearance, but it seemed to be a more serious Tony D. His beard was grown out a little more. He had a very nice new coat that gave off, I don't know, like a darker vibe, a more serious vibe. I mean, again, it's only one extremely brief appearance, but I mean, me just spitballing here on a Sunday morning full of caffeine, it's almost felt like, WWE's kind of tweaked that Tony D'Angelo character, that gimmick, potentially with a view of like, yeah, we want this guy on the main roster, but that previous gimmick might not quite work as it was. So, NXT, it is kind of its own world. It is a little more gimmicky. You can get away with a little more gimmicky stuff there. For me, again, just guessing, I reckon we're going to be seeing Tony D kind of test out a more serious version of his character, establish that, and then, yes, maybe then he gets that main roster shot down the line. But while Tony D'Angelo is now back on our screens, somebody who sadly seemingly won't be on our screens for the next little while, is AEW's Darby Allin. Last week's Dynamite story mentioned how Darby had been in hospital following his Continental Classic match. Sorry, that's easy for me to say that Sunday morning. Following his Continental Classic match against Kevin Knight. A great match, a fun little surprise win as well, the surprise win for Kevin Knight there. Now, Darby being Darby, some fans presume that Darby in hospital, yeah, that's going to be part of a storyline. I mean, this is the dude who was set on fire and was kind of fine, or as fine as you can be. The guy who's done insane stuff, fallen through glass panes outside the ring from a ladder inside the ring, all that stuff, and has been, fine, as in not really reported to be injured, just maybe a little banged up, which is crazy to even think about. So surely he'd be fine after a straight up singles wrestling match against Kevin Knight, right? But no, it was reported last week that Darby really is hurt, suffering an unspecified injury in that night match. An unspecified injury that really did result in a hospital stay for him. I think it was a couple of days or overnight. And now, last night's collision saw Darby Allin officially pulled from the Continental Classic, which is a massive shame, man, but hopefully he can heal up with whatever the injury issues are. And now Darby was in the Gold League, where after that loss to Kevin Knight, he was then due to face Kazuchika Okada, Kyle Fletcher, Mike Bailey, Speedball Mike Bailey, and get a rematch with Pac as well. That was the other one, following obviously that loss to the Bastard at Full Gear. Now, much like Commander stepped in to replace Juice Robinson in last year's Continental Classic, it will be Jack Perry taking Darby's spot in the Gold League this time out. Jack Perry obviously has that uphill battle joining the tournament one match in, and with that one match being Darby's loss to Kevin Knight. These tournaments and injuries, man. I mean, WWE's The Last Time Is Now tournament. That's, Sheamus and Penta both suffering injuries there. But anyway, the Continental Classic, it's always a really good time, for the most part anyway. I mean, some people will say it's a lazy way to avoid focusing on any real storylines, and it's just, a case of, here you go, here's good wrestling for the sake of good wrestling. But when you do it right, you can interweave a whole bunch of story threads throughout that tournament. This year, just a couple off the top of my head, there's the brewing rivalry there between Okada and Konosuke Takeshita, which surely that match has to be the final. Or you've got Jon Moxley finally being booted from the Death Riders at some point. Please. Again, though, that's all only when the story's done well. So we'll see how these things play out across the tournament. And in terms of doing well, TNA Wrestling recently did very well for themselves by securing a TV deal with AMC that will start in January. A multi-year deal with supposedly a very healthy payday for the company, though the specifics are being kept a little quiet right now. But speaking of which, actually, I should probably throw out there, I should be due to have another chat with TNA President Carlos Silva this coming week, so keep your eyes peeled on the channel for that interview, where we will indeed be talking all about that TV deal. But rounding things out with some TNA talk today, and Fightful Select has a little more contract news when it comes to TNA talent. Now this past week, the past couple of months, to be fair, there's been plenty of reports of certain TNA deals either coming up or already having come up. And now Fightful Select reports that Killer Kelly's existing TNA deal was due to expire in December. as in this month, adding that both sides have been in talks about an extension. So hopefully an agreement can be reached there. I mean, Killer Kelly is a lot of fun to watch, man. Just a total badass. Such a presence and aura to it. I mean, that chain match against Masha Slamovich from this past summer just is a prime example, even though that was a loss. Now, added to this Fightful Select report also confirms that Myron Reed, which is Killer Kelly's fiance, has been working in TNA without a contract. Again, though, he's also been in talks about a deal with the company. I mean, for Myron, you've always, as well, you've got his Rascals buddies there, Zachary Wentz and Trey Miguel, whose deals, they're some of the ones that are coming up in December as well at some point. And then you've got Desmond Xavier, the former Wes Lee, who returned to TNA last month. He's another not currently under a TNA deal. So in theory, all 4 Rascals could be free to go elsewhere by the end of the year. 2 of them currently working without a contract. The other 2 with deals expiring at some point soon this month. But for me, I mean, if I'm TNA, I'm doing all I can to get the Rascals tied down, especially with that AMC deal now in place and due to kick off what is hopefully a big 2026 for the company. And with that, be sure to check out the other excellent video that is floating around here somewhere. I'm off to do a bit of editing work, then catch up on UFC 323, even though I've already had some bits spoiled for me. Silly internet. But this has been WhatCulture Wrestling, the solo Sunday news. Myself, Andrew Pollard. Be well, stay safe, and I will catch you next weekend.